Welcome back to another segment of how to make a Pokemon better. For this week, we have Ledian. Ledian is notoriously bad. Like, even the most casual of casual players know that Ledian is considered one of the worst Pokemon. This Pokemon has been ragdolled for eons and eons with how utterly poorly it was designed. Outside of its design though, it's still utterly terrible. So let's dive into that. The bug flying type combo is pretty awful. Unless you just happen to be Mega Pinsir, who is good, but more because of aerial late return and access to close combat and Earthquake rather than its typing as a whole. Butterfree and Vivillon have also happened to make it work minorly, but that's because they have Compound Ice Sleep Powder, Quiver Dance, and strong attacking moves to make up for it. This typing combo has a lot of weakness, and with Stealth Rocks considered one of the de facto best moves for singles, I'd argue that only makes the situation worse. Offensively, the only things you hit for super effective damage are Fighting, Grass, Bug, Dark, and Psychic. This is fine and all, but you also get completely stonewalled by Steel, which is one of the most common types in the game due to how solid it is defensively. So even offensively, this isn't all that good. But that's just the tip of the ice shard that would utterly decimate Ledian, even from full HP coming from practically any solid attacker. Let's take a look at these stats, yeah? Let's see what we got. We got base 55 HP. Okay, I guess. Base 35 attack. Okay, maybe the Pokemon with the signature move of Comet Punch is a special attacker or something, right? 50 defense. Yikes. No bulk on the physical side. Base 55 special attack. Oh, okay then. So maybe no offensive momentum either. Okay, maybe the base 100 special defense and 85 speed stat will give it something, right? Let's make a specially defensive set and throw it up against a prominent special attacker that conveniently doesn't have Psyshock. Maybe then it'll surprise us. Oh hey, a max special defense set only takes 42.9 to 50.9% damage from a max special attack Goldango Make It Rain. Yeah, that, see? There is a niche. Now, what can it do back to Goldango? Not a single thing. And Goldango can just use Nasty Plot and recover, and Ledian is forced on heavy duty boots, so it can't even recover with leftovers. This was a poor comparison. So yeah, offensively and defensively, this is a pretty do-nothing Pokemon. Ouch. Alright, in terms of coverage moves, we have some potential here. It gets Knockoff, gets all but 3 punch moves, 4 if you count Sucker Punch. It gets nothing really good for flying moves unless you want to do itemless acrobatics. It does get Defog, but there are really just better defoggers. It gets Reflect in Light Screen if you want to try it, but you can't hold the Light Clay because you're probably using heavy duty boots to avoid Stealth Rock damage. It gets U-Turn, but coming off of a 35 base attack stat, you're better off using most other Pokemon that get U-Turn. Yeah, these are all nice moves, but there isn't particularly much you can do with them unless you're bent on playing Toxic and Roost. In which case, there's probably another Pokemon I can point you towards that does it better, heals from being poisoned, and has an actual stat line, up. With that, I gotta say, I love Gliscor. So before we discuss Ledian and how we're gonna buff it, perhaps we should compare it to 2 bug types who would share a similar role like it does. Sharing a role is an overstatement, because Ledian has no role. So I guess we're comparing it to other bug types who Ledian probably wishes it could be more like. So speaking of Generation 2 bugs, let's talk about Scizor. We all know why Scizzor's good, right? It has a whopping base 130 attack stat, solid bulk with 70 HP, 80 special defense, and 100 defense. It has plenty of resistances due to its typing, and access to incredibly strong priority with Technician Bullet Punch. It can power itself up with Swords Dance, it can pivot out with U-Turn for switch momentum, it has Defog to remove hazards, Knockoff to remove an item, Superpower in close combat for incredible fighting coverage, and until Generation 9 Scarlet and Violet, it had access to Roost, which gave it a lot of staying power. While its role was always mitigated to Bullet Punch, it had many versatile sets and ways it could go about its role, which made it excellent. Shuckle, while not particularly the best bug type, is probably the best defensive bug type, since most other bugs tend to lead offensively or to setting up Sticky Web. Shuckle is no different in the Sticky Webs department, but it has a bit more going for it than just webs. It has an incredibly whopping 230 in both of its defenses, backed by a mediocre 20 HP and even lower attacking and speed stats. Yet despite this, it still manages to find use in the lower tiers for its ability to set up Sticky Web, set up Stealth Rock, and do irritating passive damage with Infestation and Toxic. Combine this with access to Knockoff and the ability Sturdy, and you already have a solid lower tier Pokemon. Hilariously, we're not quite done yet. This Pokemon also gets access to Contrary and Shell Smash. So for those who don't know what Contrary does, it changes all stat buffs into stat nerfs, and vice versa. Shell Smash sharply raises your attacking stats and your speed at the cost of lowering your defenses. Now, Contrary entirely flips the script on that, and lowers its already meager attacking and speed stats in order to give way more defense buffs. Combine this with Rest, Toxic, and Infestation, and you have quite the annoying wall on your hands if this gets going. So now that we've drawn comparisons and discussed how Ledian is outclassed stat-wise, move-wise, type-wise, and just about everything-wise it would seem, maybe it has some sort of niche ability that will give it an edge in the game. After all, Azumarill was bad until it got huge power and access to physical water moves. Maybe Ledian has some sort of amazing ability that we can make use of when battling competitively. Let's see what we've got. We got Swarm, which buffs its Bug Stab when it's at low HP. Coming from those attack stats, yeah, no thanks. Early Bird? I mean, I guess it's nice, but you really don't want a sleeping Pokemon to stay in regardless unless they have Sleep Talk. And the hidden ability they gave it in Generation 5 is Iron Fist, which gives it punching moves, none of which are same type attack bonus, a 20% power increase. Oh yes, of course, from a 185 attack stat from an Adamant max attack Ledian to a 222 attack stat if you're using a punching move. This is a joke. They did this on purpose, and they knew it. I've seen non-evolved Pokemon hit harder than this. In fact, Porygon, who does not have adaptability the same way Porygon Z does, has a higher attacking stat. It's pretty sad. You know, I think we're gonna need to do a lot of legwork if we're gonna buff this Pokemon. So now that we've covered why this is considered one of the worst Pokemon in the game to what is probably specific, crippling, and painfully excruciating detail, we can go over how we can fix this. I don't like to massively overhaul stats to where it's a completely different Pokemon, so I'm gonna see just how far I can go with realism to give this the buff it needs to actually be good without saying huge power, pure power, adaptability, Wonder Guard, or introducing an entirely new ability tailored specifically to it just so it can see even the slightest of viability. And realism is immediately out the window. I was lying. 35 physical attack with Iron Fist just isn't cutting it. Let's just tune that up to 110? 110? 110. And that's the only stat buff I want to give it, because we're trying to make it usable, not an OU Mega Demon. We had enough of those this generation with Houndstone, Fluttermane, Iron Bundle, Palafin, Annihilate, Chi-Yu, and Cyclezar? Anywho, Ledian needs base 110 attack. That is the only stat buff, just strong enough to at least make it a frail wall breaker. This, combined with Iron Fist, would finally give this guy's punches some much needed oomph, and finally be able to damage the metagame at large without getting walled and overpowered completely. Finally, U-Turn does damage and makes it a semi-okay pivot. This little bug suddenly has options at its disposal, and I'm happy for it, is what I would say if this was real. We're not done yet though. So we're not gonna try to change its ability. With 110 base attack, Iron Fist suddenly becomes good, so we're gonna stick with it. So instead, let's look at its type. Bug, Flying. I need you to look me in the eyes right now and tell me if there's a single viable Bug Flying type that isn't called Butterfree and Vivillon, who are both gimmicky at best. That's the point. And since Mega Evolutions don't exist anymore, Mega Pinsir is gone as well. That thing was pretty solid in OU for a little bit, before eventually getting power crept and put in the UU. There was even a time where Ninjask did its sting with Baton Pass, but since that's banned now, it's lost its usage. So no more speed boosting past shenanigans. Mega Pinsir was good, but it took up a Mega slot, and there was just better. Why? Because Bug Flying is bad. That's what I'm trying to say here. The two bugs that showed up were exceptions, not rules. So just listen. and I assure you, I have the perfect way to buff Ledian to some semblance of viability now that we just gave it 110 attack. Let's change the typing from flying to normal. Now, before you ask why I'd remove this thing's super effective coverage, well, first, ghost immunities and not being forced into heavy-duty boots is nice. Secondly, did you know that loaded dice got introduced this gen? Did you know Comet Punch hits 4 to 5 times and is thus buffed by it? Did you know that Comet Punch is 18 power and 85 accurate? Oh, never mind. Base 25 power and 100% accuracy. Base 25 power and 100% accurate can hit 4 to 5 times and is Ledian's signature move, which is also a normal type. This buffed with 110 base attack, normal stab, and loaded dice? Talk about a wall breaker. So sure, you're hitting less super effectively, but personally, I think that you're still hitting things harder overall thanks to the normal stab, and potentially going in the Terra normal if you're feeling spicy. And with the attack buff, you're not walled by steel. You have Drain Punch now for recovery. Well, not that you really want to keep it in on any physical attacking steel type, because 50 defense is still bad. But hey, at least you can defeat special attacking steel types. Celesteela won't see it coming when you use Thunder Punch. Trust. And sure, I could buff this thing more and give it defenses and more speed, and then more of an expanded move pool. But personally, I think this is enough for now. 110 with Iron Fist and loaded dice Comet Punch can do quite the hefty bit of damage. And with U-Turn to get you out of a bad situation, Drain Punch for recovery and steals, and access to things like Thunder, Ice Punch, and a plethora of other moves, plus Swords Dance and Tailwind, you're looking pretty good. But yeah, these are really all the buffs it needs to at the very least crawl its way out of ZU, and maybe become a lower tier demon with its ability to punch a weaker metagame into bits. But what do you guys think? Do you like the way how I devised Ledian to be improved upon, or do you have your own way? As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below.